All right. Hey, guys. Welcome to the Upper Left Show. Today, I'm joined with my co-host, as always, Cassandra Marks, down in southwestern Washington around the Vancouver, Portland area. And we normally get on here every week and we meet with somebody different in a different real estate market and discuss kind of what's going on in their world and what they've been seeing and what their trends are in a very hyper specific place and mindset. But today we're actually going to be kind of taking a step back and looking at more of on a national and a public scale of what we could be looking forward to in 2023. So just want to throw out a little precaution here that these are our predictions
and our personal opinions.
Predictions and personal opinions. And while we are both real estate experts, I don't have a crystal ball. Cass actually might, but I don't have one to see the future. So these are our predictions based off of data, based off of what we're seeing. And of course, all those past episodes where we've talked with other brokers in other areas have really, I think, set us up to have a pretty good educated conversation on this. So, Cass, I'm actually going to throw you off here a little bit and bring you in up front and kind of go back before we go forward. So there's a lot of good data to talk about, but I kind of want you to go over how we got to the point that where we're at. Because I've said it 100 times before, knowing where you came from is important to get to know where you're going.
Yes. Well, first of all, everybody, Happy New Year. Hopefully everyone's year has started out well. Obviously, a lot of people are still on vacation today because, they get today off because of holidays and weekends and stuff. But yeah, so Austin, let's talk about where we started. And we really do have to go back to what everyone loves, the crash of 2008.
Sure.
And what happened in 2008? Well, obviously the market, predatory lending, lots of bad things. And then, so with home building back then in 2008 and before, on average in the United States, home builders were building somewhere between 800 and 1.2 million single family homes per year. And, just cranking them out year after year after year. Well, when 2008 happened, then all of a sudden you've got basically all these houses on the market and everybody stopped building. So for 2009, 10, 11, maybe part of 12. So we're looking at maybe about 4 years, 3.5, 4 years. All of a sudden, they only built 1 million homes.
Yeah.
So we are at that point, by 2012, 2013, we are already 3 million homes behind where we need to be. So then we start, things get back going forward. We're marching. And then 2020 happens. And y'all think I'm going to say pandemic, but I'm not going to say pandemic. Not yet. The largest generation in our history, the millennials, the largest portion of them turned 30 in 2020. And what do you want to do when you turn 30? You want to buy a house.
Yep.
Well, we're already 3 million behind. The largest part of the largest generation is of home buying age. What do you think is going to happen? And then you throw a pandemic in the mix. All of a sudden, the next thing you see in some markets, 20-25% appreciation year over year for a couple years. And now you're, some homes, I don't know about the Seattle area, but some homes in the Portland, Clark County, Southwest Washington area have appreciated 40 or 50% in 2.5 years.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts because we talk about the millennials. We were one of the first generations that we were kind of rebellious in the sense that we weren't super fast to marry. We weren't super fast to have kids. We were a little more reluctant about college and we were a little more careful with our money. So as you rolled into that 2020-ish time frame, not only are we approaching our 30s, but at the same time, we're either living with roommates or we're living at home. And then, as you said, you got to the pandemic, and you realize all of a sudden your home is now your office, your living space, your escape. and your freedom, but you're stuck there with 4 other dudes or your mother-in-law, all of a sudden that motivation is to get the hell out of that house as fast as you possibly can, right?
Yeah, and there's so much more than just that too. Like, right now, even like with the transition of the pandemic, so what you're facing as a home buyer, being a millennial home buyer, is you're going up against the older generations who have been in the market, have all of this equity, and can outbuy you. And that's a lot of the cash buyers. That's what was going on. And on top of that, the parents to the millennials are also a very large generation. You're looking at the boomers, and a lot of them with people living longer, these people are deciding they want to age in place instead of moving into assisted living. Or in other cultures, it's very common for many generations to live together. Well, in the United States, for some reason, in about the 60s, maybe 70s, when you were 18 and were making enough money, you could buy a house. And it just that split happened in the United States in like the 60s and the 70s. So owning a house when you were of age was something you absolutely needed to do, and it was looked down upon to live with your family. But if you look in Hispanic communities or Asian communities, there's many generations living under one roof. So that also has contributed to some of what's been going on. And when you have the older people, like the older generations that have all this equity, you just, as a millennial, can't compete with that, because I know so many of my millennial friends that are sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars of student debt, and they count that when you're trying to figure in a mortgage.
Right.
So you do that. And then on top of one other story, oh, and you remember we had Patricia on a couple weeks ago. And here's another thing that adds to all of what's going on right now and where it's going to lead us in 2023. And it has to do also with those institutional investors that are sitting there and cranking out and purchasing all these homes. We talked about it with Patricia in December, and we'll drop a link in the comments or in the description to that video. But we talked about these institutional investors that own somewhere between 500 and 1,000 houses in these neighborhoods, and they're all going to be single family rentals. They're never going to be for purchase. So that is also limiting people's ability and the inventory for people to buy. So now you got all of that from 2008 till now has went and done this, and has just put this huge squeeze on us. And now we're looking forward to 2023. And what does it look like, Austin? What do you think?
Honestly, I think one of the things that really stands out for me is when I'm looking at 2023, and it's one of the things I'm actually the most excited about is, I'm going to throwing you off here, I'm sure, but I think buyers having some leverage is something that I am super excited about as we move in to this year. I mean, the market's already kind of shifted into like a more buyer friendly market. And I know sellers still hold a lot of the cards, but mortgage rates are going to rise. Affordability is going to dip a little bit. And then once that happens, our sellers out there, they're going to have to kind of shift their expectations to match more of this changing market. And that's, I think, really going to start giving the buyers some leverage. And I think you're going to see as the year goes through, we're going to be in a more balanced position than we have in previous years. You're going to start seeing things like, there will be more inspections. The Seattle area got really bad where no one was doing inspections at all for a really long time. And now we're starting to see a shift to where not only are we seeing things like inspections, but now we're starting to see concessions. And I think one of the craziest things to kind of think about is right now I'm seeing buyers that are enforcing a little bit more leverage as we're moving into the new year with, inspections, with asking for concessions. But at the same exact time, I think this is kind of an interesting predicament, which is why I think it's more of a balanced position. A lot of the sellers right now have a low interest rate, and they're not really in a position where they're forced to move. Now, in 2008, everyone was upside down. Everybody was in frankly, a super shitty position. Inventory was in a super shitty position. Right now, everybody's got equity, like you said, 40 to 50% in just 2 years. And then on top of that, they have a 3% interest rate. So if I'm a seller, come at me, man. There's nothing out there. but I do think buyers are going to gain some leverage.
So fun fact with the interest rate, did you know that 75% of people in the United States who hold a mortgage currently hold one with 4% or less interest rate?
That's incredible. I'm good for everybody.
Everybody got on that refi train.
Yeah.
I have a girlfriend that has like a 275, and I was like,
so for all you people that said when rates got low and we came to you and you said you wanted to wait for the market to go down and prices to go down, and we told you that it doesn't work that way. Well, now prices have skyrocketed 40 to 50% in 2 years, and your mortgage rate went from 2.5 to 3 to possibly upwards of 7.
And we've talked about this in other videos, but especially it's in this one. When you as a buyer, so our interest rate in January of last year was like 3.5, and now it's like 6.5. So that went up 3%. For every percentage point that the interest rate goes up, a buyer loses 9% of their buying power. So since January of last year, you have lost 27% of your buying power as a buyer. Yeah. Let's wait for it to cool off, guys. No, just kidding. It's not always the right time to buy for other people too. And that's okay. We as realtors understand that, situations come and go. And sometimes you just can't buy at that moment. I mean, I got clients right now that can't buy and it's not financial reasons. There's other reasons, and it's okay because that's their story. They will buy though. I know they will.
Now, speaking of interest rates, I saw this this article here about possibility of mortgage rates dropping. Obviously the outlook remains gloomy. We've got to have that in there, otherwise we'll be able to shock and awe everybody. That's got to be a big scary thing. But what's your thought? What's your prediction for 2023? Are we going to see a decrease in interest rates, or do you think we're going to float around the 7 still?
Well, so since last week, I was actually right before we got on this call, I was talking to one of my lenders, and they said that for a while there in December, rates were floating in the high 5s with a point buy down, and now they're back over 6, still with a point buy down. I think until the nation gets inflation under control, I don't foresee them going down, because everything is going up, everything is being super pricey, and they need to get that under control. And so when I look back at some of the other data and predictions, they were talking Q3, Q4 of 2022, like, oh, it might get to 5. I'm like, yeah, it was like 7 almost at the end. Like once you take the point off, for people that don't understand, you buy down points, like you pay for that. So like the top end of the rate, like, oh yeah, you get 6.5 if you buy a point. So technically rates are over 7. And I just don't think they're going to go down. I don't, until that inflation number is back down. But what we're starting to see a lot, and I've read a lot of the labor reports too, is last time it was a lot of blue collar. In 2008, it was a lot of blue collar workers that were having issues and having employment issues. And now it's a lot of the white collar workers. They're starting to get severance packages. They're going to start going on unemployment. I know there's been a huge exodus of people in the San Francisco Bay Area in tech companies that have been laid off in the past few months. And I don't think it's going to stop, because people still need to report to their shareholders. And how do they do that? Well, for people that don't know, if you lay off less than 5% of your workforce and you are a publicly traded company, you don't have to make an announcement about it. And one of my girlfriends was partial to that. They laid off 4.79% of their workforce. And so they didn't have to tell their shareholders, and they didn't have to make like a public announcement about it, because they only laid off that many.
Well, you just keep the number right where it needs to be.
Yeah. So they're Facebook, I think Facebook laid off 11,000 people. Netflix laid off a bunch of people. I think we're going to start seeing more layoffs here in the next few months, because people have to report earnings, and they have to report the 45 to 60% profit margins that people got used to there for a while.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting as these numbers keep going, and like if you're correct, if rates continue to increase, it's going to be a rough year. I mean, and then of course, if you look at things like we're seeing lower credit scores across the board, things like that, because of people being affected by jobs, that also is therefore going to go back and affect your mortgage rates. But that said, I do think in 2023, I think that buyers will warm up to the higher interest rates.
Well, they're going to have to, because real estate, people always need to buy and sell real estate for a multitude of reasons that we know. There's new life, there's death, there's relocation for family. I mean, there's tons of reasons. It's just going to take a little bit longer, I think, for people to realize that they're possibly outgrowing their house, or that it's too big for them. But there's other ways to circumnavigate that. I know I've seen some people, at least in the Portland market, start offering rate assumptions.
Right. If you do this right, but yes, that's a good one for sure. So I kind of got a two-piece prediction here, and obviously love to have your feedback on it. So, like we said, the housing market's shifted considerably already. Mm-hmm. And my thought, I don't actually know, right? Like, we don't really know. Everyone's different. Seattle market's about 3%. Like you said, we talked to Tricia that about 20%. But point number one is home prices, they might decline. Now they have dropped from where they were at their peak last year, but they're still above 2021 market prices, which would make them about average. We saw mortgage rates kind of stabilize in December, and that activity kind of seems to be resuming. Like, I don't know if you felt it or not, but in the past like 2 to 3 weeks, I've been really seeing buyers come back onto the market. So that's part one that I want to touch on. But then part two of that, with that possible home price decline as far as sales, is one of my predictions is that we're going to start seeing some pandemic era buyers begin to face buyer remorse. There was such a huge rush to buy homes, and these buyers were paying premiums. We had a guy out here in Bellevue that offered over $100,000 cash over asking and a Tesla S just to get in the door. So I'm kind of believing that these people are going to start like regretting those decisions. And as we move into 2023, like if those prices do decrease, buyers who overpaid in like 2021 and 2022 are going to start really not having much equity, and they're going to be stuck with a property that maybe they didn't want, and they were maybe looking for it to, keep trending the way that it was, and then be able to upgrade into the perfect house as it might be. So thoughts on a possible slowdown, thoughts on buyer remorse?
Possible slowdown. Well, it's happening in Portland. I'll tell you that right now. Our inventory is up year over year, which is great. But it's still not back to pre-pandemic era. We're still, typically at this time of the year, we have somewhere around, I think, Portland itself typically has about 7,500 houses on the market. And there's only like about 5,000 right now. So we're a little bit lower than that. I saw a recent article this morning on our RMLS morning update on Mondays. And the article in there stated they were talking nationwide what cities and country or in counties and stuff and states were seeing still increases in price and who were seeing the largest decreases. And the only city from the West Coast that was listed on there, other than San Francisco being like flat year over year, was Portland, down 5.8% in sales price. And I'm seeing it because I just wrote an offer at list price. So you write it at list price. This is some writing here. And I asked for 6% seller concessions. So actually I'm asking 6% less, which was $21,000 off the sales price. So right there, 5.8% down, I'm writing 6% in seller concessions on an offer. It is turning here.
And it got accepted, right?
Still waiting to hear.
Still waiting to hear. Okay. But,
I just
but
I
there's not the
just sent it.
uncomfortability. There's not the uncomfortability of writing that offer.
Oh
A
no. I
year
mean,
ago,
I'll write whatever my clients want to write. I've always been that person because you can't get a no if you don't write it. You get nothing.
but a year ago, it would have been inadvisable to
Oh,
try to get 6% off of any property.
no. It was like 6% over.
Yeah, exactly. So, what are your thoughts on the buyer remorse over the last 2 years? Do you see eye to eye with me on that one? Do you think there's going to start being a shift in the way buyers fill out the properties that they bought, or they bought too high?
I feel like you've been watching my YouTube videos because I talked about this in one of them. Absolutely. They're 75% or no, 74% of buyers that bought in 2000 between late 2020 and 2021 have buyer's remorse for the home that they purchased. And that is because typically when you are purchasing a home, you want to make sure that 95 to 100% of your needs are met by that home. But the FOMO was so bad for like 2 years that people were literally throwing $100,000 over ask at these houses. And we're just like, woo. And the houses were maybe meeting like 60 to 75% of what they needed. So, I mean, I try to advise my clients the best I can. I ask them, does this fit your needs? Are you just having FOMO? Like, what are you doing? Like, and ultimately it's up to them. It's their money, their time. But I think we're going to see the house isn't going to be working for them. And we're going to see more houses come on the market, I think, because people are having that FOMO and they're just going to have to suck it up, buttercup, and enjoy the new interest rate, or, get a 3-2-1 buy down by that 6% concession.
Yep. I know there was a point up here where the average offers to acceptance was like 11-1. So the journey of home buying is already insanely stressful. And the idea of having to find 11 houses that I would like before I got one, I just can't. That emotional roller coaster, I think, would even put the most sane person in a position of FOMO. So people that kind of got themselves there, I don't blame them whatsoever. It was
No.
just a wild.
And the people that were buyer's agents, like primarily buyer's agents in those 2 years, like bless their hearts, because the few times that I really had to dig in, I was one of 35 offers on a house one time. And my client was like, I think the list price was $489. It was a really outdated mid-century house, but it was beautiful. It could have been remodeled amazing. It had so much potential. Corner lot, big lot, like nice neighborhood. And he's like, "Oh, I want to write 525." And I was like, mm-mm. And he's like, 545. And I'm like, mm-mm. He's like, 565. I'm like, mm-mm. And he's like, "Well, 575 is my top." And I'm like, "You probably won't. I'm pretty sure you won't get it." And he's like, "What?" He's like, "That's almost 100,000." And I'm like, "All right, 575." I go, "But I'm just being really honest with you. Yeah, that house sold for $615,000 cash close in 10 days. He was a cash buyer too, but he didn't want to go higher than 575.
Yep. And part of that was, just the way things were, but we also had an insanely low amount of inventory that kind of drove everybody to act and behave this way. And that's the next point. I think my prediction for 2023 is I think we're going to see a good increase in inventory. Now, some of the stuff we've talked about today kind of almost makes it feel like you wouldn't. Because I know, like right now, our area is down in listings. But I think when you get out of these fall months, like you said, we've got the buyer's remorse, we've got people moving, we've got things going on in the world. I don't think inventory is going to increase insanely, but I do think we're going to see a more relatively like fluid market as we kind of move out of these holidays and hopefully as rates kind of stabilize themselves out, so we kind of get through this first quarter. Are you thinking you're going to see an increase in inventory, or you think we're going to stay tighter and lower because people are scared because of rates? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's going to be like gas prices. Do you remember when gas prices went up to like $5 a gallon. And everyone was like, and like, oh, I'm not going to drive anymore. Like, I mean, I did it too. I was like, screw that. I ain't driving anymore. It's like $100 to fill up my little hoopty. Um, and I think it's going to be fairly similar to that, where, people are in sticker shock right now with the interest rate. And when they find out that it ain't going anywhere because inflation's not changing, I think they're going to come to the realization like, oh crap, my family doesn't fit in this house, or we're having another kid, or like, I don't need 3,000 square feet anymore and I can't deal with the stairs. So people are going to buy and sell. Do I think we're going to get back to the inventory levels pre-pandemic? No, I don't. I think we're going to get close, just because, like you said, people are still hesitant. And with 75% of mortgage holders having less than a 4%, going up to 6.5, maybe 7, that you're getting close to almost doubling your payment at that point,
Yeah.
which is unfortunate. And so I think the inventory is going to go up. I don't think it's going to match where it used to be in like 2018, 2017, but people are still going to be buying and selling. And it's a matter of if you want to do it or not, if you need to.
On those, I think as rates increase, right? You talked about how they lose 9% for every percent, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to automatically push some buyers out, right? And then if inventory does increase even a little bit, some of our buyers are now out of the way,
Mm-hmm.
and inventory has started to creep up, right? I think, and this is my personal last prediction. I can't wait to talk to you about the few you have left on here, but we're going to really see, more so than the past few years, we're going to start to see some buyers who are considerably choosier.
Oh, that's already going on.
That is going to be, I think, the biggest. And so for those of you watching this who aren't real estate brokers, this is going to be something that we're going to have to readjust to, because we've been so used to, like, it's a house, it has the right amount of bedrooms, and it's on a foundation, right on offer.
Yep.
I mean, this is going to be the largest segment of opportunity that buyers have had in 36 months. So I fully expect in my last prediction 2023 is that buyers are going to be considerably choosier than what we've seen in the past few years. So if you're selling, everyone wants to wait till the spring when it's all pretty and beautiful out. But if my prediction is correct, I would say get rolling on that thing pretty quick, because once that mindset sets in, it's going to be no stopping. We just saw a cycle where the news fed all the real estate buyers, the sky's falling, the sky's falling, the sky's falling. And as a broker, I can tell you that I saw a huge decrease in activity, like a complete pause. And then everybody kind of came around and was like, oh, okay, this is where we're at now. And now things are picking up quite a bit. And so if this prediction is correct, I'll give you guys another 90, 120 days, but you're going to start having buyers that are come through and they're going to pick apart your damn houses. And it's not going to be like it was 3 years ago. So if you think you should have sold it 2 years ago when interest rates were 3% and buyers weren't doing inspections and buyers were trying to give you their first child, well, I'm saying it's still a seller's market, but you just better get ready for the most picky people on the planet to come out of the woodwork.
Yeah. So typically in the real estate world, we see they say 6 months of inventory is probably a balanced market. I personally think that's changing. I think it's going to be more around the 2.5 mark, 2 to 2.5 months, which is where we are right now in Portland, because I can walk in as a buyer's agent and request this 6% concession. But also, as there's still enough buyers out there, we are still seeing maybe not 4 or 5 offers on a house, but 2, maybe 3. Sometimes it just depends. Every house is different. It depends what you're looking for. And so I think we're going to see this in between stage where I think 2.5 months is balanced at this point. I really do, because you're able, depending upon your type of house, you as a seller, you can still negotiate and say, well, I don't feel like giving that into you, put it back on the market, and like 2 or 3 weeks later have another offer. You're not going to get another offer the next day, because that's what I've been seeing is I see people go off the market, and typically it's about 2 to 3 weeks before they go off market again. And I think 2023 is going to be the year of, I talk about the buyers, the sellers, and the investors. I think 23 is going to be the year of investors, honestly, because, and I'm not talking about us as personal investors. I'm talking about like large end investors. And if they're buying, they know something. You should probably be buying too.
Yep.
Because if they're buying millions of homes in Texas, Georgia, and Florida to make into rentals, I mean, they're just limiting the amount of supply. And I was talking about this with another friend the other day, and saying, she was asking, she's a doctor. She was asking if this was the end, like if we were the last generation that was actually going to own homes without generationally them being passed down.
Right.
And I said, with the cost of everything, yeah, I think so. I think it's going to become much, much more difficult to not, like, you're going to be passing your house down to your kids eventually, because they're not going to be in a position possibly when they're old enough to buy, to have enough money to afford it.
Well, I mean, the average first-time home buyer is now 36 years old.
Yeah.
That's really high comparatively. So also, because I'm saying that, not a prediction, but I just saw a video of a guy online, and he said, like, if you're over 20, I need you to be buying 2 houses a year every single year for the next 20 years. And I know we get a lot of that shit on social media, but if you're not there yet, it's okay. Just take steps. You don't, part of this fear of, are we the last generation to buy and where stuff at, is because we have these preconceived expectations placed on us that by the time you turn 20, 18, you go to college, you get out at 22, you have the perfect career and you buy a house. But the numbers show that people aren't even, are in their late 30s now before they're even starting to offer on homes on average. So if that's you, don't beat yourself up. Just piece by piece it, like get your credit in order, get a good job.
Talk to a lender. Real estate agents are not people. They're not experts on your finances. Talk to a lender. They will find a way to get you into a home.
I'll always pass you off to a lender, but I just want to give like a courtesy, like empathy,
Yeah.
If you're
and
not
I don't
there,
mean to like scare people, but it was an honest conversation. My girlfriend trusts me and my opinion and things that I've seen. And I was like, on average, and this is another thing I learned this morning, on average, okay, so over the last 100 years, they have averaged appreciation for a home. And in the United States, that average appreciation over the last 100 years, year over year, has been 4.22% per year.
Not bad.
I mean, 4.22%. So you get years, you get 2008, it takes a tank, but like you add all 100 years up, and the average appreciation of a home year over year is 4.22%. Well, I mean, 4.22% for paying a mortgage. It's a nice forced savings account.
Yeah, that's basically what it is.
So I mean, I guess, I don't know. It's so all over the place. And when you look at the projections, I can sit and stare at the numbers for Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, NAR. I love NAR. They're always, I feel like they're always on the wrong end of the spectrum. But when we looked at August versus December numbers, they undershot, and all of a sudden we were where we are. Do I hope and wish and pray that numbers go down to back to 5s? I think if it goes back down to 5s, I think as a buyer, you're going to have competition again. And we're going to be back to multiple offers, because it's just that little bit, that 1% brings 9% of your affordability back in. And it would be really awesome if it did get back to that, because I'd love to see more buyers being able to afford homes. But right now, I think it's been a little much. Oh, so Austin's gonna go leave me here by myself. All right, that's fine. I can handle this. I'm a big girl. I put my pants on. So we follow this website. It's a really good website that a lot of agents have hands in. It's called Keeping Current Matters, KCM. They have a lot of good data that comes out from there. And I was looking at some home price forecasts for 2022, and all like Fannie Mae said that we would see like 10.8% appreciation. Freddie Mac said 10.4, all the way down to NAR said we're about 8.4%. So that's where we were. In Portland as a whole, or in Southwest Washington, Clark County saw about 12.8% appreciation last year, year over year. As of the end of, I think the end of November numbers were showing that. And so I would say, I feel like I said, I feel like NAR is a little off on their numbers. They're a little conservative. But so what we're seeing through those entities for pricing forecasts for this year is very much different than last year. So you're looking at Fannie Mae is saying that you're going to see on average, like nationwide, about a 1.5% decrease in house prices, which isn't a lot. It that doesn't shock me with the interest rates where they are, just because of affordability. And then you have other places like realtor.com that are predicting houses are still going to appreciate nationally 5.4% for the whole year. And we look at this data and we see it and it comes out, but it's always changing. And a lot of what you see on the news and different spots, it's kind of crazy because they show you national numbers. Well, national is an average. Every area is different. So I always recommend, wherever you guys are, talk to your realtors, talk to your friends that are realtors, other agents. Keep up on your numbers, because people are going to be asking you these questions. Hey, look what he's scrolling in. What are we? Oh, that's the realtor.com one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the data has been, there's very, very wide opinions of what 2023 is going to bring. So I don't think anybody knows.
No, like that's what I said at the beginning. Like, it's not like we have a crystal ball. Hey,
No.
you know what? Actually, here's something I do want to touch on right here.
Okay.
Rent. Like, just straight up, we'll just go super transparent here as we're kind of getting down to the wire. But like, I didn't actually plan on talking about rent, but now I just saw that pop up on realtor.com. I'm hoping to see rents come down, but I doubt it. I don't know. Like, rent is something that I'm so and we live in very different areas. When you're looking at like the bigger cities, like if you look at our two bigger metropolitans like Seattle and Portland, like we don't have rent control, so we just do whatever we want.
We do.
Basically, and Portland does. So I see Seattle trying to, not necessarily, I think, at the heart of it, be harder on landlords and investors, but they're trying to do essentially right by the renter. But I think the harder they are on our investors, the more likely they are to take their money and go somewhere else, therefore decreasing the rental units, therefore seeing an uptick in rental prices, especially with no rent control in place.
So I don't even know where to go on that one, because I got like 3 directions I can take that. So let me cover the rent control really quick, very briefly. So typically in October, the inflationary number comes up. Plus 3% is what Portland is allowed. On average, the last few years, it's been somewhere between 9 and 10.1. Like, that's what people can increase their rent year over year. Now, I love this and I hate it. 14.5 this year. 14.5. And I shit you not, they are going to take it because they can, because we are in a housing shortage, whether it is apartments or houses. They will take it because they want money. And they also need it because property taxes are going sky high, and materials and labor to fix anything that needs to be fixed, like if the AC unit breaks or or the stove goes out. I mean, a stove, you used to be able to buy a stove for like $400. Now it's like 1,000. Like that is like the cheapest stove you can find.
Right.
So, I mean, with that, they're trying to use those numbers to keep up. I don't see rent is not going to go down anywhere. It will not, because we are in a housing shortage. People want places to live, and people are willing to pay whatever to have a place.
Man, yeah.
You'll have to. What are you going to do? I mean, that's probably, and I don't even want to get into this, but that's probably also why part of the homeless crisis on the West Coast is because it is so expensive out here.
Well, if you look at our average rent right now is like about $2,800 a month. And so if you take that 14%, you round it off a little bit, it's basically a $400 a month increase. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you we look at the homeless situation or whatever else going into this next year. We just talked about how there's a huge likelihood that we're going to see continued layoffs and continued people cutting back on employees. But yet, based off the numbers you just gave me, that means the average rent in my area would go by $400 a month. Mm-hmm. So how are people supposed to afford anything if their jobs are cutting back but rent's increasing $400 a month?
You know, and my favorite treat at Costco, I hadn't seen it in a while, and it was typically $6.99 a bag. It's these like little like waffle cookies, that coconut waffle and chocolate cookies. They're so good. Last time I saw them at Costco, they were $6.99. When I saw them there over the weekend, they were $9.99, and I was like, I'm not going to buy those because it's like 4 cookies.
Inflation has gotten so bad. Gas prices, we talked about earlier, being at $5, have now dropped down to about $3.45 out here, and
$3.
And it made me realize, like, cool, inflation's up so high, the gas prices are down. Now I can drive to nowhere because I can't afford to do anything. The shit's so expensive out here.
And I think one of the other predictions that I saw when I was reading through all the material before today was a lot of places are actually anticipating a very large migration to the Midwest.
Yeah, it's so cheap.
And I'm going to tell you, as someone that lived in the Midwest, I'm staying here.
Bro, it's cheap for a reason. It's cheap for a reason.
My husband asked me why I had so many clothes, and I said, well, in the summers in Minnesota with the humidity, it can get up to 120. And then I go, and in the winter, -60 is a real number. You tell me why I own so many clothes other than just being a girl.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's got to have mountains and water now, or I'm not going.
I mean, but people will go, because I think last time I checked Minnesota, the average home price in Minnesota was $345.
Yeah.
I mean, $345 is really good for like a almost 3,000 square foot house.
Yep. Yeah.
You're going to spend $8 here.
Well, and some of these companies are getting smarter to it. So when they relocate now, they're docking people's pay. So earlier on, they weren't necessarily, but now Microsoft, for example, if you're moving out of Seattle and you go to like Lenexa, Kansas, they're not going to pay you Seattle living.
No, it's cost of living adjustment.
Yeah. And Google's doing it too. A lot of these big companies out here in Seattle are kind of adjusting to it. So, all right. Well, so I'm going to let you do a rundown. I'm going to do mine real quick. So just to break it down, my 2023 housing market predictions and where we're headed to is home prices might decline. In that process, some pandemic era homeowners are probably going to see start feeling some remorse. I believe that buyers are going to start getting a little bit of leverage in the market. I think we're going to get some sense of normalcy to return to real estate. And I'm actually really excited about that. I do personally believe that rates are going to continue to increase. Cass kind of nudged at this a little bit, but at the same time, buyers will warm up to those higher rates. And lastly, because of all those factors, I do believe that as I move through 2023, that buyers are going to be more choosy about the properties that they're looking at.
I feel like I don't even have to talk. I was afraid we would not be on the same the same side. I really was. When we started talking about this earlier, I was like, I don't think we're going to have the same opinion. I agree with just about all of that. I don't necessarily think rates are going to increase, but I don't think they're going to go down. I think we're going to see this just stagnant like 6 to 7% for most of the year. And then people are just going to be like, I just need to buy a house. Because when gas was $5 a gallon and they're like, well, I'm tired of being at home. I'm just going to go, whatever. Like they'll just figure it out. Creative financing, buying with other people, whatever. People always figure it out, which is sometimes unfortunate, but yeah, I think 2023 is going to be the year of equal playing field for buyers and sellers. Interest rates are going to stay where they're at, so maybe a tiny decrease in house prices, but I think we're just going to be in this for most of 2023. So
Well, you want to let us know what's coming up on the next show?
Absolutely. So I would like to thank everyone for dealing with us today. This is a tough and a very dry subject to deal with. But we appreciate you being here. And if you found it informational or not, I mean, whatever. If you liked listening to us, both Austin and I have tons of information about his market, my market on our channels. Please subscribe. But for upcoming, I am so excited about this. I told you who it was, didn't I?
Oh yeah, I'm pumped.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Today.
Oh man, I am so excited. So on January 16th at 2 p.m. Pacific, 4 Central, we are going to have the one, the only, the Utah mom, Mindy Grocquist. I'm so excited. If you guys have not seen her on TikTok or YouTube, Instagram, you have to look up Utah Mom.
Yes.
Her stuff is so funny. Like she sent me one of them, her very first one the other day. And I hadn't watched that one because Utah Mom's been around for a long time. I was like in tears. I don't know. I'll have to send that one to you. But so there's your homework. We'll be back in 2 Mondays on the 16th. And your homework is go look up the Utah Mom. So thanks again so much for tuning in. I am Cassandra Marks. He is Austin Robertson, and we are the Upper Left Show. Make it a great week, you guys. Happy 2023.